Okay, I can admit it. This was supposed to be a two-part video sequence about the Idaho 4, the house that's being demolished and coming down, the crime scene, and the evidence that I, as a defendant, would be trying to attack at trial, both inside and part 2 outside of the home. But ladies and gentlemen, my mind just doesn't work that way. It never stops. It keeps ticking. So, I gotta come back real quick. I got more on my mind about the inside of the home and the evidence and how I would attack it at trial. I'm A.R. Hayes. This is Convicts Thoughts. Let's get into video 2 of now. Who knows how many this is gonna take me? My mind just... it dissects everything, ladies and gentlemen, and I know many of you, just through engagement and discussions we have, not only on my channel, but other channels that we engage in the chat, and we talk. We don't just conform to what people think is the right thing about this case. We talk about it from all angles. Some of us could even admit, God, some of that, I'll tell you what, some of that evidence could really be devastating if it was found and utilized properly. It could be damning in a court case and at a trial. But I think I've already laid out the groundwork about how I feel in regards to the investigation of the inner part of this home, because I feel as though it's contaminated. I feel as though it's been manipulated. I just don't feel right looking at another man who deserves a fair trial. I don't care what people say about monster this, psychotic break that, sociopath, serial killer material, whatever you guys claim. Because trust me, when I had to sit in that defendant's chair, I knew everybody had a different opinion about me as a person. Not one of them knew or even took the time to get to know me as a person or find out the real and true details before judging me. And that's where a lot of people get really hung up and stuck, in the sense that they've been fed information that's going to guide them into a biased opinion of somebody, that the whole spectrum of evidence and everything about him, none of it's been correctly displayed in full. So I'm not going to do that. But what I can do is, when I look at the totality of beginning until now of this case, I see issues. Now, if this were any other type of case outside of, let's say, a murder or a child issue, a sexual predator, some of those natures, and we were just looking at, let's just say, like a basic burglary or something a little more high spectrum, where maybe even somebody did get hurt, but we were looking at the way crime scene was handled and the evidence was handled, we would all have to say, well, that evidence has to be tossed. It's contaminated. When we see a flaw in the investigation, most of the time, we as good people with our thinking minds step up to the plate and say, hey, look, in all fairness, this could create doubt in this case. This is not handled appropriately. The problem with the Idaho 4 is many are willing to overlook that key fact and find this gentleman already guilty not only of the quadruple homicide of Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana. But more so on top of that, they're willing to hand him the death penalty without even looking at the fairness of how it's being handled. I can't throw my hat into that ring. I just can't do it. I won't. I will not do it. So when I left here and I was preparing myself, jotting down my thoughts and talking with my dogs while my wife is at work. Of course, I got 3 beautiful pups. We have some great discussions, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, Xander's an up-and-coming pup, very intelligent. Bayou, in his older age, has some experience and wisdom. And Aspen, well, she snores and just pretends to be a part of the group. But in these discussions, the things just continue to pile up and lead us to more important thoughts. So as a defendant, with everything I've explained in video 1, so if you've missed video 1, please refer to that because it's going to give you more insight into what I'm talking about in this video. The more I thought about it, I have to first, in my defense chair and with my counsel, I hate to say it, but I got to go with Dylan and Bethany. I have to. Were you home? Point blank to both of them. Were you home? Do you have proof? Do you have proof where you were, what time you got home, what were you doing when you got home? Is there anybody that corroborates that story that you were at the house? Anybody? 2, were you impaired on the night of the crime? And I'm not asking this question as if they didn't have the right to have a little bit of fun in life. I don't care. I don't care. If you partied, you partied. I don't care. But I need to know, were you impaired? If so, what were you impaired on? Guys, impairment is one thing because it can muffle the thoughts and maybe even times and thinking processes and the understanding of what's going on around you. However, the type of impairment can distinguish whether or not you were coherent at all. Some impairments speed you up and make you more wide awake and on the edge, and virtually everything around you is emphasized, where other impairments, you're gone to the wind to sleep. Even if your eyes are open and you're awake, you're gone to the wind. You're gone. So yes, it matters. Also, the length of that impairment matters. Depending on what you are impaired by will determine how long you're actually impaired. Some impairments could knock you out for hours upon hours worth of time, and other impairments you gotta come back to within a reasonable amount of time. So how impaired were you? What were you impaired on? And were you even home? And if so, can you prove it? Can you prove it? The reason why this is important to me is I, as a defendant, want to, 1, discredit anything that they're saying, but 2, I literally want to nullify them completely from being able to testify or give any information in regards to me being a part of the case. I want them and everything they told the police as completely inadmissible. I want it gone. Now, I also want to compare that, exactly what they testify to exactly what the law enforcement interrogators and interviewers documented within their documentation. How did they actually record everything, for one? Is it video? Is it audio? Is everything note taken with none of that to it? Because I want to put a spin on it and maybe discredit any of the investigators or law enforcement that are working the case. I believe that we saw early on Ann Taylor went for the training records of certain officers who held the interviews and the interrogation. That's great. Okay, perfect. But I want to full out prove you mishandled your witnesses. You didn't document whether they were impaired, what they were impaired on, how long they were impaired, because that all matters. It's all testimony. That's all evidence within a case. And if I could disprove that connection between the witnesses and the law enforcement as being transparent and truthful, not only should I be able to discredit your said witnesses, the bushy eyebrows and the all clad black and everything of that nature, but on top of that, I want to discredit your actual law enforcement interrogators that have talked to many others and most likely been the ones that ruled them out. You can't rule out anybody if you don't properly interrogate or interview. If you are not transparent, if you do not conduct the interview in a manner that gets the obvious, very important details, not only just the details that are going to help you into your case, but I need to know the details that could hurt the case. Now, is that Bethany Funk's exculpatory evidence? Does she know Dylan was nowhere coherent? Could she say that Dylan was just not even capable of giving any details to investigators in that interrogation room that would at all line up to how to prove this case? That'd be a big knock on the prosecution, considering at that point, if I can nullify that and prove that, I can't even say the word. The evidence that would show Brian Koberger that Bethany Funk could possibly testify to does not always have to be actual physical evidence or even a statement that says somebody was or wasn't there. What it can be is her making statements that contradict the interrogation and the documentational flow of what Dylan was telling them, and whether that should have even been taken into consideration as real and true, valid evidence. She could discredit all of that. And if you discredit those interrogators, nothing they gathered in this case at that point should even be deemed relevant or honest. It's got to be thrown out. Now, is that going to happen? Who knows? But I know if I were a defendant and my lawyer didn't think of attacking that, I'd be banging my fist on the table. I want to know. You better be able to prove she either A, was 100% sober when she gave her statement that you utilized in your PCA to get my arrest warrant, or 2, she better have been fully transparent to your questions of, was she impaired, what was she impaired on, and how long it affected her for. Transparency is key, ladies and gentlemen, not only by the witnesses, not only by the system itself, but the interrogators who lie and lie and lie. Trust me, in an interrogation, you go back and you watch, law enforcement does not have to tell the truth. They can come back in and tell you the full gamut of BS that they have against you, including evidence, DNA, saliva, blood, whatever they want. They can tell you whatever they want because all that matters to them, and it's plain and simple. They want a confession. Why? Why is a confession important? It gets rid of any investigative issues within the crime scene or the individuals within it because now they have a confession. They can move forward with that. It nullifies that. It nullifies any errors they make in the investigation of the crime scene. It's gone. You have a confession. It nullifies any issues that you have with witnesses. They're gone. You have a confession. That confession is going to lock up the case. The prosecution in this Idaho 4 case, and I know it from being able to say I've sat not only in the interrogation room, but I've sat in the defense chair. They thought, heart and soul, they were going to get a confession or a nail in the coffin evidence. They got neither. Just my opinion. It's just how I feel. It's my opinion, and people are going to throw me to the wolves for it. But I'm telling you, from my experience, the way this is being handled, they either A, thought they were getting a confession, trying to just get the word out there of how, sadistic he was as a man and the reasons why he did it. And then also, tried to get a less charge where he could live, instead of on death row and lose his life and firing squad, he could live life in prison and write his letters and do all that. That's what the prosecution wanted. They didn't get it. So you have to imagine now it comes down to the point we have to focus as a defense of how we're going to attack that. And the first thing is you got to nullify the witnesses. But second of all, you got to start attacking the actual physical evidence from within the home. Number one, how good of an investigation, how good are you at examining a crime scene if you didn't even look in the trash with the so-called pizza box of the pizza Xana and Ethan were eating at the so-called entrance into the home? Was anything in that trash? Was that trash there the entire time right before the crime happened? Did he maybe accidentally kick the trash on the way in? Did he touch the trash with his hand? And did he drop sweat on it? Anything? How the hell would you know? You didn't even touch it. You didn't look at it. You didn't take any evidence from it. You just walked right by it. So how would I, as a defendant, feel that the people that are actually in the crime scene collecting the evidence didn't even take enough time to ensure there was no evidence on a trash bag on the deemed entrance and exit of the crime scene? How do you know that whoever committed the crime didn't put the trash outside the back door on their own? Maybe his clothes were in it. Maybe there was evidence in there. How would you know? You didn't look at it. I mean, I see them doing all the detailed forensics in the kitchen. I see, the detailing in the living room. I know the crime scene is not confined to Maddie and Kaylee's so-called shared room upstairs on the 3rd floor, and I know it's not confined to Xana and Ethan's shared room on the 2nd floor. I know that's not possible. First of all, the perp or perps has to make his way between the two. But I also have this gut feeling the way that they were analyzing that walkway and that just area in the living room and then also in the kitchen, there was more detail than what has been specified or shared. But they want to make it seem as though, through not only the statements of Dylan, but also through the writing of the PCA, that everybody was in their rooms at 4 a.m. calling it a night, which we know is not true. No DoorDash driver would be showing up, dropping off food, if that bedroom wasn't calling it a night. And she was on TikTok. They utilize this information to make their case, yet they also make the claim that Dylan states everybody was in their rooms by 4 a.m. calling it a night. That's contradictory. Already, we got contradiction happening. And if you slow everything down, slow your mind, slow your breathing, just let your thoughts come to you and just think about it step by step, things all contradict each other. Not only in the writing of the PCA, not only in the way that we have seen the investigation transpire and the lies being told from beginning till most likely even now in the courtroom, not only by the investigating law enforcement, the public speakers at the podium in regards to making statements to the press, the community, the entire world, but then you also have to look at the prosecuting attorney, Mr. Bill Thompson. Are you being completely transparent in the things that you say? Are you being completely transparent that certain things that you make claims are no longer around or they never existed? Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? When you make a statement in regards to the IGG and how the FBI handled all of that, are you absolutely sure everything that you made that statement to is actual, factual, and to the point? Or are you utilizing the law enforcement way that we don't have to tell the truth until we're put on blanket at trial? Been through it far too many times, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why my mind works this way. Why do you still have Ethan's golf clubs? Can you not come out and be honest that you are not only seeking the evidence and purchase and ownership of a K-bar, but there's possibly other weapons that have been used in this crime scene that you found within the crime scene? Did you find a broken golf club? Did that broken golf club shaft maybe line up with some puncture wounds? And that's why people have come out and made statements that not all the wounds and the attacks on the bodies were the same? When you really slow down the thinking and you critically look at the things that are being said, it does not add up to a direct, transparent conversation from start to finish. It's even to the point that when you discuss certain items of evidence, they don't add up. But because of the manipulation and the twisting and turning of not only words, but also the way you've conformed the evidence, and I said it, ladies and gentlemen, you molded and conformed that evidence to better fit timeline, eyewitness statement, and whatever else you may have up your sleeve that you're going to try to utilize. You've even made the statement that the IGG testing and information received back, the tip from the FBI, did not lead to your arrest warrant. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Are we ignorant enough that we're just going to let it zoom over our head? I can't do it. Like, I draw a very fine line. It's called respect, to where I don't blatantly go out and just smash people with my words. I don't want to get caught up in a lot of the hoopla. I don't want to speak negatively upon people. I don't want to throw any shame on anybody's name. But in this scenario, the Idaho 4 has my mind twisted enough that it's time that people look directly at those in charge and say, either be transparent and honest or drop the case. You better start laying this out flat. And I'm even saying this about the defense attorney at this point, Miss Ann Taylor. You are allowing and just agreeing with everything being sealed and redacted. And I'm not sure that's the beneficial way. That's definitely probably not the way I, as a defendant, would want this to go, because I feel as though that makes me look like I'm a part of it at the least, if not the culprit of it. I feel like that's me as a defendant allowing my attorney to play the non-transparent game ourselves. And I don't think that's the way to be. I just don't. Especially if you are literally using the words exonerated. Exonerated isn't, I'm going to get found not guilty due to a technical error in the case, and it's not, I'm going to get found not guilty because of reasonable doubt. Exonerated means you better damn well know I didn't do this, and my attorneys and I are going to shove it down your throat and prove it. Just like the prosecution should be shoving it down his throat, displaying the exact evidence and the way they got their evidence down the defendant's throat. Well, the defense should be doing the exact same thing back to the prosecution. Offense, defense, ladies and gentlemen. Both teams have to know how to play both. You can't just sit back as a defense and a defendant and put your hands up and say, we're going to wait till trial and we're going to let the prosecution fail and we're going to take advantage of that. That's not exoneration of a defendant. And that won't get you a not guilty verdict by reasonable doubt, because you're allowing things to fall through the cracks that at some point they're going to make sense and add up for a prosecution to find you guilty. We know there's blood splatter all over the inside of that house. We know. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. They only gave a description of the 1 foot latent footprint. We know there's more than that. Come on. We're not crazy. We're not crazy. We know by the way they were investigating within that kitchen, there's blood in that kitchen. Someone got attacked in that kitchen. Okay? The crime scene is not the 2 bedrooms. There's more to it. And we're only talking right now the inside of the home. Video 3, I promise you, we're going to talk outside of the home evidence. But right now, we have to feel as though someone has pulled the wool over our eyes and expected us to not try to see through it, to realize there's more to this on both sides of the coin. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm fighting both sides here. I'm even holding the defense accountable for making some pretty bad-looking errors in the defense as well. This is just one big game going on. I know people have mentioned it to me and they brought it to my attention. What do I think about informant? What do I think about this? And I'm setting all that aside for right now. That's a discussion for another day. Right now, the conversation is literally a defendant that made the claim he wants to be exonerated in this case. And I'm also looking at an investigative team, not only just the Moscow Police Department, but we're also talking about the State Police Department and the FBI. And I know the FBI was only requested to utilize their technology and the different ways to investigate. They were not lead. They were not expected to take control of this case. But I'll tell you what, you put all those people together, not only in the interrogation rooms, inside the home with the forensics, and where are we at right now? I mean, it's been stated there's just barely over 100 pieces worth of evidence collected within the house. That's not good. That's footprints, that's blood splatter, that's whatever, all the stuff that they gathered thinking that they could build a case upon that. That's not very much. People talk about the terabytes and all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, when you do all the digital testing, the forensics, and you do all the videographing and the photographing and the audio, that adds up quick. It's not a lot. So as a defense, number one, and I just have to wrap it up with this, and I had to do this second video. Dylan, Bethany, were you home? Point blank. Were you impaired? On what? Who could confirm you were home and what you were impaired on? Give me your phones. I want everything on your phones. I want all your social media. I want your boyfriend's phones. I got to confirm everything about you two, and then I can expand out. That's not attacking surviving witnesses, ladies and gentlemen. It's not attacking them. I'm glad they're alive. Dylan and Bethany, I'm glad you both survived. But we have questions. We do have questions. And we need to start sorting out all of the questions and being transparent through this entire process. Otherwise, only two outcomes can come out of this. An innocent man gets put to death by firing squad, or a guilty man could possibly walk. And I don't think anybody wants this to not end with absolute justice. And I'm going to say their names again: Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee. But at the end of the day, if this case wasn't handled correctly, we have to ask for justice for Brian Koberger as well. I'm A.R. Hayes. It's Convicts Thoughts. Just had to come back in real quick because my mind won't stop. But yes, video 3 down the road. Have a great night.